Here are 7 simple tips to improve your English as fast as possible. Let's begin. Tip number 1, immerse yourself in English in as many different ways as possible. For example, the easiest way you can do this from anywhere in the world is simply by changing all of your electronic devices into English. If you don't feel like you're at the level of English where you can change all of your electronic devices into the English language, you can also set English as a second language on all of your electronic devices. Another easy way to immerse yourself would simply be by listening to English music instead of music in your native language. For example, if you like pop music in your native language, you can listen to English pop music. If you like hip hop or rap music in your native language, you can listen to English music that is also hip hop or rap. It's usually not very difficult to find the same genre of music that you enjoy in your native language also in the English language. And lastly, the easiest way that you can immerse yourself in English is simply just by making sure that you're able to label everything that you see every day in English. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you should be able to label every object that you see in your bedroom. You should also be able to label every object that you see in your bathroom. And the same thing goes for your kitchen. For all of the objects that you come across in your day to day life, you should know what they are in English, and you should be able to associate your experiences with those objects with its translation into the English language. Now, the main benefits of immersion are really how fast or how much more quickly you can learn English with it versus without it. English terms and expressions will become familiar much more quickly when you expose yourself to these terms several times every day through immersion. This leads me to tip number 2, which is you need to make sure that you speak aloud every single day. Not sometimes, not only on Mondays or only on Fridays. You need to speak aloud in English every single day. That means Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. For example, whenever you have the opportunity to speak to an English speaker, you should always take that opportunity, even if it's small and minor. An example of a small opportunity would be when you're going to the grocery store. If there's an English cashier, you should speak to them in English. When you're ordering food at a restaurant, if you're in an English speaking area, speak to the waiter or waitress in English. Especially for those of you who have English immersion available to you based on where you live, you should absolutely be taking advantage of that opportunity. For those of you who don't have easy access to English immersion, you should still try to speak English with other fluent English speakers in your country, whether they be tourists or teachers or professors in your country. Next, an easy way that you can speak English every day aloud is just by summarizing what you're going to do during the day, first thing in the morning. When you wake up, literally speak out loud and announce what you're planning to do that day, how you're going to organize your day, what you hope to achieve on that particular day. And then when you get home, the last thing you do before you go to sleep is summarizing how your day went during the evening. You can simply reflect on how your day went, if it was as productive as you would have liked it to be, if you did everything you wanted to do, how certain things may have made you feel, things like this. Just by practicing expressing yourself, forming opinions, forming thoughts, and just practice actually communicating it and articulating it out loud in English. By training your mouth to do this every day, you're going to see huge benefits. The main benefit is that by physically training your mouth to speak English, speaking will become second nature over time. It'll become extremely natural and extremely easy to speak spontaneously if you practice doing this every single day. This leads to tip number 3, which is you need to continuously practice and build your English vocabulary database. Now, if I were to break this down in a really easy way, step number 1, you can use an application such as LingQ to efficiently learn new vocabulary words. This is especially a great app to use if you are below the B2 level of English. With the application link queue, it will feed you content based on what you're interested in, and it will feed you content based on your current level of English. As you're reading, you can play the audio of the text out loud
Identification.
so you can improve your reading and your listening skills at the same time. In addition, you can observe what good grammar looks like in English. And not only that, when you come across a word that you don't understand, you can simply click on it and it will tell you the meaning and give you the translation. If you were reading a real book in a language that is not your native language and you had to research and look up every single word or expression that you did not understand, it would be extremely time consuming and honestly a very inefficient way to learn new vocabulary words. So, if you're someone below the B2 level of English, I would highly recommend using LingQ to build your vocabulary in the beginning phases of learning English. Now, if you are at the B2 level or higher, you could simply just use English media with subtitles, and that's a good way that you could also build your English vocabulary. You can associate the words that you see in the subtitles with the images or the actions that you're seeing on the screen. However, both of these methods can be beneficial for you no matter what your level of English is. Now, once you find a way to actually learn new vocabulary words, you're going to use the application Anki to build your vocabulary deck. Anki is very simple to use. You download the app, you can create your own flashcards with the meanings on the other side of them, and then you can practice them. You can build multiple different vocabulary decks based on different criteria or different topics. Or you can just create one deck with the words that you feel like you need to practice the most. Once you build your vocabulary decks, you can review your deck whenever you have downtime. For example, when you're using public transportation, when you're on the bus, in a taxi, in an Uber, or on a train. Another example of when you could practice your Anki deck is when you're eating or when you're waiting for something. Just by reviewing this at small periods of time every single day, it will really add up. The main benefit from doing this is when you use Anki, it implements something that we call the spaced repetition technique. Now, this technique has been proven to work over a very long period of time throughout history, long before I was born and long before our generation was born. Now, the spaced repetition technique will help you focus more on the words that you're less familiar with as opposed to the words that you're more familiar with. By doing this over time, you're going to see very fast advances in the progress you make with your English vocabulary. This leads me to tip number 4, which is you need to type and text daily. Now, with the technology that we have today, at the date that this video is being recorded, typing and texting every day is extremely easy to do. You can simply use any texting or typing tool with spell check. This could be a Google document, a Microsoft Word document, the Notes application on your phone, things like these. It's also extremely easy to type or text to a native English speaker online if you don't have access to one in person. For example, you can go on Instagram and shoot me a DM at any time. I'm a native English speaker. I like to help people learn English as a second language. In addition, if you don't feel confident enough to communicate with a native English speaker by typing or texting online, you could always use an AI bot as well. As of today, artificial intelligence cannot communicate in as much of a nuanced way as native English speakers can. However, for beginners, I would say an artificial intelligence robot is good enough to get started. Now, the main benefits of typing and texting daily would be it gives you the opportunity to practice actually applying the words that you learn each day, making them easier to remember. This leads to tip number 5, which is you need to consume English media that is actually realistic. Examples of realistic English media would be podcasts, interviews, and videos of real life interactions. These could be videos that are educational or just entertaining. Now, the main benefits of consuming English media that's real is that you'll actually expose yourself to vocabulary that you will likely have the opportunity to use and apply in real life situations that you'll face. Unfortunately, when you consume fictional media such as TV shows, cartoons, or movies, a lot of the vocabulary and expressions that you'll be exposed to may not necessarily apply in any real life situation. However, if you consume media that consists of two native English speakers or more communicating with one another organically, then most likely you're going to come across vocabulary words that you can actually take, implement, and apply to real life situations. Which leads to tip number 6, which is consume alternative English media. Examples of alternative English media would be doing activities along the lines of observing the lyrics of English music, reading English poetry or English riddles, or consuming different forms of English comedy. Now, the main benefit to consuming this alternative English media is that you're going to expose yourself to nuanced and advanced English vocabulary that is mostly used only by native English speakers. Now, when it comes to special and slang terminology in the English language, you do not necessarily need to actually use this. However, it is extremely important that you can at least understand what it means when you come across it on the internet or even in real life. By being able to understand advanced English terms that you'll find in English music, English poetry, and English comedy, this will help you become a better communicator, even if you choose not to use these words or expressions in your own vernacular. It will also give other native English speakers a lot more confidence when they speak to you if you can understand advanced terminology like this. And this leads to the last tip, which is you need to stay consistent. And when I say stay consistent, I mean stay consistent in all 6 of the skills that you need to practice every single day to improve your English skills. This means you need to be consistent when it comes to practicing your grammar, vocabulary, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Now, I did mention grammar. When it comes to grammar, you do not need to know crazy or advanced grammatical rules in English. You should just know the basics and you should know them very well. You should know how to conjugate something into the past, into the future, and in the present. For example, I am recording this video is the present. I will record this video is the future. And I did record this video is the past. Basic grammatical rules like this should be understood and they should be understood well. And just by consuming English media, you're going to be able to observe this passively as you practice your English. For all of the other skills, if you're doing what I mentioned in this video, you will inevitably practice your vocabulary, reading, listening, speaking, and writing every single day. Even if it's minimal, do not ever skip any days of practicing English. It will kill all momentum and it will make it much more difficult to actually see some progress and some results in a short period of time. And even though if you work really hard at learning English, you can learn it in a relatively short period of time, but you should always view learning English as a long-term lifestyle, not a short-term job. For context, even as a native English speaker, I still have many areas where I could improve on my English. And I've been fluent in English for over 20 years. So if that doesn't show you that learning English should be a long-term lifestyle instead of a short-term job, then I don't know what does. And the main benefit you're going to get by staying consistent is that your efforts will compound over time and learning English will continue to become easier and easier and easier as time goes on. So to recap, tip number 1, immerse yourself in as many ways as possible. Tip number 2, speak aloud every single day. Tip number 3, continuously practice and build your vocabulary database. Tip number 4, text and type daily. Tip number 5, consume English media that is realistic. Tip number 6, Consume alternative English media that will have advanced vocabulary. And tip number 7, stay consistent at all costs. Now, let me know in the comment section where you're from and what your native language is. And if you found any value from this video or this channel, simply like the video and let the YouTube algorithm know that these types of videos are helping you learn English. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next video.